They were the kids who made the whole world smile. Muddy boots, mischievous grins, and a kind of joy so pure it felt like it could never end. The Little Rascals were not just characters on a screen. They were childhood itself, bottled up and played back for millions of families who believed these children were living their best lives. But what happened when the cameras finally stopped rolling is a story Hollywood never wanted you to see. Because behind every laugh, every pratfall, and every stolen kiss, tragedy was quietly building. And in the end, it claimed every single one of them. Carl Alfalfa, Switzer, Alfalfa. Carl Alfalfa Switzer entered the world on August 7, 1927 in Paris, Illinois. And by the time he was 8 years old, he had already become one of the most recognizable faces in American entertainment. As Alfalfa, his deliberately off-key singing, his ridiculous cowlick, and his hopeless romantic pursuit of Darla made audiences adore him in a way that was almost impossible to explain. He was not the coolest kid in the gang, and that was exactly why people loved him so deeply. By the late 1930s, he had even surpassed Spanky in raw audience popularity, which for a boy barely into his teens was a remarkable achievement. But fame at that age carries a weight that most adults cannot handle, let alone children. As Switzer grew older, the roles dried up, the money vanished, and the man who had once made millions laugh found himself scraping together a living through dog training, hunting guide work, and odd jobs across California. George Spanky McFarland. Spanky. George Spanky McFarland was born on October 2, 1928, in Dallas, Texas. And at just 3 years old, he walked onto a Hal Roach set and immediately owned it. Spanky was the ringleader, the fast-talking, sharp-eyed boss of the gang, and McFarland played him with a confidence that seemed almost unnatural for a child that young. Throughout the 1930s, his face was everywhere, and General Spanky, alongside dozens of short films, made him one of the defining child performers of an entire decade. Growing up, however, McFarland found that the character of Spanky had become a kind of invisible cage. Employers outside Hollywood saw a former child star. Casting directors inside Hollywood saw a face too tied to a fictional kid to be taken seriously as an adult performer. He married Paula Jean Wilkinson in 1949 and later built a family with his second wife, Doris, with whom he had 3 children. But the quiet strain of being recognized everywhere as a character he had left behind in childhood never truly disappeared from his life. Friends described him during reunion events as a man who smiled on the outside while carrying something heavy underneath. George Spanky. McFarland died on June 30, 1993, at his home in Grapevine, Texas, after suffering a heart attack. He was 64 years old, and whatever peace he had found in his final years, the shadow of Spanky had never completely let him go. Billy Thomas, Buckwheat. Billy Thomas was born on March 12, 1931, in Los Angeles, and by age 4 he had stepped into one of the most talked-about roles in the entire series. Buckwheat's wild hair, distinctive voice, and quietly expressive face made him unforgettable in a cast already full of memorable personalities. Off-screen, however, Thomas lived a life defined more by deliberate withdrawal than by the spotlight. After his marriage ended in divorce, he quietly moved into technical work at Technicolor, choosing the background over the stage in a decision that spoke volumes about what early fame had cost him. Disturbing stories followed him for years, suggesting that as a young child on set, he had occasionally been given syrups laced with mild sedatives to keep him still during long filming days. Though never officially confirmed, those close to Thomas said he wrestled with nervous tension and physical tremors well into adulthood, and the rumors never fully faded. Billy Thomas died suddenly on October 10, 1980, from a heart attack at his Los Angeles home. He was 49 years old, gone far too soon from a world that had used him far too early. Darla Hood. Darla Hood was born on November 8, 1931, in Leedy, Oklahoma, and from the moment she appeared on screen at age 4, she brought something the series had never quite had before. A warmth and femininity that gave the whole gang a different kind of heart. Her chemistry with Alfalfa became the romantic backbone of the later series, and her singing, her poise, and her natural charm made her one of the most genuinely beloved figures the franchise ever produced. Her adult years carried a private weight that rarely made headlines. She married twice, first Robert Decker in 1949, and later Jose Granson in 1957, with whom she raised 3 children. But people close to her described a woman who had never truly escaped the pressure of being expected to always look perfect, always appear sweet, always be Darla. Rumors persisted for years about obsessive concern with her weight and appearance, and some accounts suggested a growing dependence on diet pills that quietly damaged her health from the inside. In June 1979, while preparing for a Little Rascals reunion she had been excitedly organizing, Darla underwent what was meant to be a routine appendectomy. She never came home. A contaminated blood transfusion during surgery led to hepatitis, and her heart gave out on June 13, 1979. She was just 47 years old, taken by a chain of medical catastrophes so sudden and so cruel that those who loved her never fully recovered from the shock. Jackie Cooper. Jackie Cooper was born on September 15, 1922 in Los Angeles, and his raw emotional talent was so undeniable that even as a child he moved audiences in ways most adult actors could not. His natural ability to cry on command, or so people believed, became one of his most talked-about gifts. The truth behind it was far darker. Director Norman Taurog, while filming Skippy, staged a false story that Jackie's dog had been shot in order to extract real tears from the boy for a scene. It worked. It also left a psychological scar that Cooper carried quietly for the rest of his life. He later hinted more than once that 1930s Hollywood harbored adults who treated child performers as instruments rather than human beings. He married 3 times, found eventual stability with Barbara Krause in 1954, and built a long, successful career in television production and direction that most of his fellow child stars never came close to achieving. By the time Jackie Cooper died on May 3, 2011, in Santa Monica at the age of 88, he had built an estimated net worth of around $18 million, a figure that stands completely apart from almost every other name on this list. But wealth and years could not undo what had been done to a little boy on a studio floor in 1931. The success was real. So was the wound. The legacy they left behind. The Little Rascals gave the world something priceless, the image of childhood as a place of pure, uncomplicated joy. But the children who created that image paid a price that audiences watching in darkened theaters never imagined. Short lives, broken marriages, addiction, violence, poverty, and loneliness followed many of them from the studio gates into the rest of their years. Their stories are not just sad footnotes in Hollywood history. They are a warning about what it costs when an industry builds its entertainment on the shoulders of children too young to protect themselves. These kids gave us everything. The least we can do is remember all of it, not just the laughter but the lives behind it.